Hello everybody and welcome back to Paint for the Paint Gods, and today I want to talk a little bit about dry brushing. I personally believe that dry brushing is one of the most important tools and techniques a miniature painter can know. So essentially the reason it's important is because when you look at miniature painting as a whole, the core idea you're trying to achieve is the perception of depth and light. Essentially, if you are doing painting at any higher level than just applying paint to model, that's essentially what you're doing. That's why what washes do. Washes essentially add recesses. They add the appearance of light and depth perception. And that's kind of what dry brushing is all about. So first, you take your mini. I know there are some alternative ways to do dry brushing with other primers, but for the most part, you want black. So here's an primed, unpainted Terminator, and you want 2 to 3 paints. I started with 3, I usually use 2 now, and you basically want to go darkest to lightest. Again, because that's creating the perception of color. And when you look at an object, the closer it is to a light source, the more colorful it is. Like, next time you're out in public, during the day, and if there's sunlight out, look at a car and you'll see how much light actually affects the color. Rarely is anything one solid color, especially when you introduce light into the mixture, which, you kind of imagine your minis aren't all fighting in, constant absolute blackness. But I'll start with just 2 today because I think that's usually fine. So I have a medium gray Dawnstone. Another important thing is the brush you use. They do sell specifically dry brush brushes, which this is. But if you don't have one, you essentially want to take a paintbrush you don't care about with a wide tip, and you might want to cut it, or you could just use it as it is, because it's going to ruin the paintbrush for normal painting. And this is also a good thing to have. This is like a texture pad to help wipe off the paint. What you want to do is rub it off until it's about like 25%. Also, it's good to hit other spots, because otherwise you might just be re-hitting the same paint, putting more back on. I also like to use some on the base to see how it is. So there you go. Start. Just hit it all over. You can also do like circular. A lot of people like doing circular motions. One way I like to tell people is it's essentially like making them look like a stone statue. That's kind of, by the end of it, what you want them to look like. And with dry brushing, less is more. If you don't have enough, if you didn't put enough paint on your brush, just apply more, because it's much easier to put paint on a miniature than it is to take it off. So just be careful, trust the process, and also, this isn't something I figured out instantly. Like, when I was first getting back into the hobby, it probably took me like 2 or 3 days of just doing this till I fully got it figured out. Hopefully it takes you less time. So yeah, I'm gonna put a little more on of Dawnstone and hit it up. But yeah, you're just wanting to create, like I said, the perception that light is existing on this miniature, because that's what light does. If you look at anything and you put it under light, the closer it is to light, the darker it's going to be. Okay, so now we have the gray down. You missed any spots? Like, I noticed the left side of his helmet's a little unhit, so I'm going to hit that a little bit. On the back side, I think you can see it a little bit more. Yeah, it's an additive process. It's good to trust the process, Okay. And now we are going to move on to our white. Like I said, less is more. You can always put more paint on. Yeah, this is pretty much where you'd want it to be. There's a lot of different methods you can use dry brushing for. I'm actually not using any of them for this guy. I'm just gonna sponge his paint on. So this is more just to make the video. But one easy, or at least pretty, I don't like calling things easy because like if people don't do a good job at it the first time, I don't want them to feel like they did something bad. But a more basic technique you can do with dry brushing is called slap chop, where you dry brush and then you just apply a contrast paint. Since the shadow's already there and contrast paint is thin, it should show up better. A lot of things you can do. Like it's great for like if you have wings on anything, it's really nice with all the highlights. I have Seraphon Lizardmen from Age of Sigmar, which they're really good for dry brushing because they have a lot of bumps. It's also good for making metals, and I'll probably talk about those specific things later, but this was just kind of a basic on dry brushing. Thank you. I hope you're having a great day. Let me know what you think down below. And remember, paint for the paint gods.